Ray Calloway remembered the exact sound of his old kitchen going silent, 40 cooks stopping mid-service, all at once, when the health inspector's report hit the pass with a slap. 3 critical violations. All fabricated. All signed off before Ray had even seen the paperwork. By the next morning, the restaurant that had taken him 9 years to build had a chain across its doors and his name in a headline that would follow him into every kitchen he tried to walk into afterward. Nobody had hired a chef who'd supposedly poison people, whether it was true or not. It didn't matter that the sauce, the storage logs, the temperature charts, all of it, told a different story than the report claimed. The report was what got printed. Some stories take a while to show you why they matter. This is one of them, so stay close, and if you like where it's headed, subscribing helps more of these find you. 6 years later, Ray wore a hairnet instead of a chef's coat and served tater tots for a living, 3 lunch periods a day, and told himself that was enough. The cafeteria at Brookline Elementary smelled like steamed vegetables and industrial cleaner, nothing like the smell of butter browning at 6 in the morning that used to mean something to him. But Ray had made his peace with it, mostly, because of one thing, Eli. His son was 8, missing both front teeth, and convinced his dad's tater tots were the best in the entire school, maybe the entire world, which Ray privately thought was the nicest review he'd gotten in 6 years. He plated Eli's tray a little differently every day, a smiley face in ketchup, a swirl of ranch that looked almost professional, small, quiet proof that his hands still remembered what they used to be capable of, even if nobody else was allowed to know it. Nobody at the school knew Ray had once run a restaurant with a 2-year waiting list. He liked it that way. Nobody asked questions about a cafeteria worker who kept his head down and did his job. His morning started at 5, prepping trays in a kitchen that smelled of bleach and reheated gravy, nothing like the copper pans and fresh herbs he used to work with, but he never let that show on his face where Eli or anyone else could see it. He knew every kid's allergy list by heart, knew which second graders picked at their vegetables and which ones needed an extra roll because breakfast at home had been thin that morning. It wasn't the career he'd trained for, but it was honest work, and lately honest work felt like the only thing he had left that nobody could take from him twice. Walking Eli home, past the same bakery, the same wet pavement, the same gulls, Ray sometimes caught himself slowing down outside restaurant windows, watching cooks move behind the glass, feeling something between grief and hunger that he never let last more than a few seconds before walking on. Elena Voss hadn't set foot in an elementary school cafeteria in 15 years, and she wouldn't have now if her company's PR team hadn't scheduled her into a community champions visit months before she'd had a say in it. As CEO of Voss Hospitality Group, her father's company, now hers since his sudden death 8 months earlier, she'd learned to show up wherever the calendar told her to, smile, say something inspiring, and leave before anyone noticed how exhausted she actually was. She had no family left to go home to after these events. No siblings, no mother in the picture, a father buried before she'd finished grieving him properly, and a board of directors who watched her every public appearance like they were still deciding whether she deserved the chair she now sat in. She kept that particular loneliness locked behind a very good blazer. She'd inherited the company 8 months ago with no warning and no preparation, summoned back from a business trip to sign papers before she'd even had time to process that her father was gone. The board had expected her to fail quietly within a year, or so she'd overheard more than once in hallways that assumed she couldn't hear them. She'd made it a private mission to prove otherwise, one flawless public appearance at a time, even when the appearances left her hollowed out afterward, alone in a car service back to an apartment that still had her father's reading glasses on the side table because she hadn't been able to move them yet. Today's stop, a short talk to students about following your passion, standing at a podium someone had wheeled into the exact cafeteria where Ray Calloway happened to be plating lunch trays 4 feet away. Ray had one thing left from the old restaurant, tucked in his back pocket out of habit more than use, a recipe card in his own handwriting, stained at the corners, for a sauce that had once been the signature dish critics wrote paragraphs about. Along the bottom, years ago, he'd scrawled a private note to himself, half joke, half warning, the sauce always tells you what you tried to hide. He didn't know why he still carried it. He just always had. Ray was setting out trays when Elena stepped up to the podium and began her talk, and the first thing he heard stopped him mid-step, tray still in his hands. And sometimes, Elena was saying to 300 kids cross-legged on the floor, an entire career can be destroyed by one dishonest report. Years ago, my father's company was connected to a health inspection scandal that ruined an innocent chef. I still don't know his name. But I think about it every time I make a decision now, because the paperwork isn't always the truth. Ray's hands went cold around the tray. She was talking about him. She didn't know it. But she was talking about him, in his son's cafeteria, in front of 300 children, and he had no idea whether to feel seen or exposed. He didn't say anything. He finished serving lunch with his jaw tight and his mind somewhere else entirely. Elena noticed him only because he'd gone rigid at exactly the wrong moment, tray shaking slightly, and something about the way he held himself, steady hands, straight spine, the posture of someone trained, not hired off the street, snagged her attention in a way she couldn't yet explain. She came back to the school twice more that month under thin pretexts, a follow-up donation meeting, just checking in, visit neither the principal nor her own assistant had actually scheduled. Each time, she found reasons to end up near the cafeteria line, watching Ray work. She noticed he plated a simple lunch tray the way a trained chef arranges a dish for photographs. She noticed his knife work on the volunteer salad prep days, fast, exact, practiced 1,000 times over. She noticed he flinched, just slightly, whenever anyone mentioned restaurants, reviews, or health inspections in passing conversation. She went home one night and searched old company archives for the scandal she'd grown up hearing about only in fragments, her father's voice going quiet whenever it came up. She found a name buried in a settlement file marked confidential, Raymond Calloway. She matched it, hands trembling slightly, against the cafeteria staff roster the school had emailed her for a volunteer badge. She didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead she found small excuses to linger, volunteering to help set up a healthy eating assembly, offering to sponsor new cafeteria equipment through her company's community fund, anything that let her stand near the serving line a little longer. She watched him season a simple tray of steamed carrots with a pinch of something that made the cafeteria smell briefly, unmistakably, like a real kitchen. She watched the other cafeteria staff defer to him without quite realizing why, the way people naturally do around someone who knows exactly what they're doing. Once, she asked him directly, testing the water, "Did you ever work in restaurants, before this?" "A long time ago," Ray said, sliding a tray across the counter without meeting her eyes. "Different life. What happened to it?" "Paperwork," he said, and didn't elaborate, and she didn't push, though the word landed harder on her than he could have known. That evening, Eli sat on the kitchen counter while Ray reheated leftovers, swinging his feet. The watch lady came back today, Eli said, his name Carolina, because of her expensive-looking wrist. She asked Ms. Alvarez a bunch of questions about the cafeteria staff. "I told her my dad makes the best food in the whole world and that he used to be way more important before I was born." Ray's spoon stopped in the pan. "You said that?" Desmond's response was to quietly accelerate his own exit plans, transferring funds through the same shell investment group he'd used years before, certain that speed would outrun scrutiny the way it always had. He underestimated how thoroughly a grieving daughter with nothing left to lose could read a spreadsheet. Elena found herself back at the cafeteria a third time, ostensibly for a menu partnership consultation, and found Eli waiting by the tray return, unbothered by the gap between his age and her title. "Are you gonna get my dad in trouble?" he asked, direct in the way only children manage. "No," Elena said, crouching to his height without thinking about it. "I think somebody got him in trouble a long time ago, and I'm trying to fix it." Eli considered this with the seriousness of a much older person. "Good. He deserves good things. He just doesn't ask for them anymore." "Why do you think that is?" Eli shrugged, the gesture of a kid who'd thought about something a lot without quite having the words for it yet. "I think when something bad happens to a grown-up, they stop believing good things are for them. My teacher says that happens sometimes. She said it about her own dad once." Elena didn't have a response ready for that. She just nodded, throat tighter than she expected, and told him she'd try her best, which seemed to satisfy him entirely. Elena went, alone and after hours, into the company's old records archive, file boxes nobody had digitized because nobody thought they'd matter anymore. She found the original inspection paperwork for Ray's old restaurant, and beside it, a second, unaltered draft that never made it to print, clean inspection, no violations, dated the same day as the falsified version that had actually been filed. She found wire transfers from Desmond's silent investment group to the same property months after Ray's restaurant closed. She found, finally, an internal memo, a request from Desmond to expedite the lease transition, dated 1 week before the fabricated report appeared. The archive room smelled of old paper and dust, the overhead light humming faintly, and Elena worked through the boxes methodically, cross-referencing every date against her father's old calendar entries, refusing to let a single inconsistency pass unchecked. She found Sandra's name on internal emails flagging the discrepancy years earlier, unanswered, filed away rather than escalated. She found a paper trail that, laid end to end, told a complete story, motive, method, and 6 years of silence that had let it stand unquestioned. More than once she paused over a page and thought of her father, wondering whether he'd known, whether he'd looked away, whether the man who'd taught her everything about running an honest business had let something dishonest slide because it was easier than confronting a long-time employee. She decided, in the end, it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that she was the one holding the file now, and she had a choice her father never made. She photographed every page. Her hands didn't shake this time. Elena called an emergency board session and walked the room through 6 years of paperwork, one document at a time, without raising her voice once. She began with the wire transfers, laid out chronologically on the boardroom screen, then moved to the 2 conflicting inspection reports side by side, one clean, one falsified, both dated the same day, both bearing signatures that didn't match under close comparison. She walked the directors through the Shell Investment Group's incorporation documents, the property records showing the lease transferring within 6 weeks of the closure, and the internal memo requesting the expedited transition. An innocent chef lost his restaurant, his reputation, and 6 years of his life, she said, because Desmond Price falsified a health inspection to clear a lease for his own investment group. I have the original, unaltered report. I have the wire transfers. I have the memo requesting the fabrication in writing. And I have an employee who flagged the discrepancy years ago and was never asked to explain why she stopped pursuing it. Desmond's composure cracked in real time, denial giving way to silence as director after director recognized their own signatures next to numbers that didn't match what they'd been told for years. He tried, briefly, to suggest the documents had been misfiled, then stopped when Elena produced the original registered mail receipts confirming otherwise. The board voted for his immediate removal and a full legal referral before the meeting adjourned. Nobody shouted. The truth, laid out in order, didn't need volume to land. Sandra Okafor offered her resignation the following morning, unprompted. Elena didn't accept it outright. She asked instead for a full written account of what Sandra had known and when, and a promise that the next time something looked wrong, it wouldn't take a stranger's daughter 6 years to notice. Sandra agreed, visibly relieved to finally set the weight down. Elena drove to the school herself that evening, holding a folder instead of flowers, and found Ray finishing the last of the dinner service cleanup alone. I found the original report, she said, sliding it across the counter to him. Clean. Unaltered. 6 years too late, but it's yours now, on record, publicly.